It's Archeage 101 with Jalan. And I know right off the bat, you guys, you're seeing the old slides. You're like, no, not another death by PowerPoint. Unfortunately, this is the last of the concept videos I got to get through. Really boring stuff, critical rate, critical damage, and defense penetration. But we got to knock it out before I can get back to the class videos. I keep getting asked all the time by people, which one do I want? And let me tell you, there is no easy answer to that. I've spent about 3 months doing builds and spreadsheets and testing and then taking that and putting it in game. And let me tell you, it's been hurting cats. This is a very, very difficult project to have done. And the reason why is Archeage doesn't really follow a standard balance mechanic. Classes aren't locked to a particular gear. And the truth of the matter is, I don't think even Tryon knew how it was going to get laid out. Last year, they did this interview, and it says it's described as a rock, paper, scissors format where one will be better against another and weaker against the remaining. So at some point, somebody wrote on the cue cards that Archeage is rock, paper, scissors class balanced. Let's rock, paper, scissors that out for a second. So you got Battle Rage. And I think most people would agree that Battle Rage can beat Sorcery. I think most people would agree that Sorcery can beat Archery. But I can't find an Archer who's going to just agree, yeah, I can beat Battle Rage. I don't think that's valid. So if we flip it up a little bit and we got Battle Rage beating Archery, I think most Archers are going to agree with that. Archery beating Sorcery, that was a little bit harder of a sell. But Sorcery beating Battle Rage, I don't think that one works either. This is clearly not accurate. It's not a rock, paper, scissors balanced system because there's more than one variable. When you come across an opponent, it's not just a matter of are they Battle Rage, are they Sorcery, are they Archery, but it's also a dice roll. Are they wearing plate? Are they wearing leather? Are they wearing cloth? If this was really a rock, paper, scissors balanced situation, it would be, does my skill tree beat their skill tree? Now, of course, at the very top, the very best archers might be able to beat the middle ground melee. The very best sorcerers might be able to beat the very best archers. You know, there'd be some give and take. But that's not how Archeage is set up. Archeage is now set up with really two questions. Does my skill tree beat their armor? Does their skill tree beat my armor? If I'm sorcery wearing plate, fighting somebody who's Battle Rage wearing plate, then I probably have the statistical advantage. So really what you end up is you have to do a much more elaborate rock, paper, scissors for it to be accurate. Battle Rage probably beats Sorcery and Cloth. Sorcery and Cloth probably beats Sorcery and Plate. And Sorcery and Plate probably beats Battle Rage. Unless, of course, you run into somebody like me who runs Blade Dancer and Cloth. Archery probably beats Sorcery and Cloth. Same thing, Sorcery and Cloth probably beats Sorcery and Plate. And Sorcery and Plate probably beats Archery. Probably. The problem is Hiram Gear has thrown everything for a loop. Hiram Gear allows you to go plate for a very high defense and have magic damage reduction. And then you can use your cloak, your costume, and your combat panties. You can plug that magic defense hole. We know some changes are coming to plate, but we don't know what those are. We know some changes to damage reduction are coming, but we don't know what those are. Healers out there, I am going to give you a little sneak peek. Healers in the upcoming patch, not the next one North America gets, but in the upcoming patch that Korea is getting, or has already gotten, excuse me, healers take a 30% reduction of self-healing. That's a completely different topic. Rage about that in the comments below, and I'll do a piece on that. The problem with crit rate, crit damage, and def pen is it's not this or that. It's not always a question of critical rate or critical damage or def pen. Sometimes you have to pick between options. In Hiram Gear, there's all the options, but you can only take two about the way the Hiram weapons are. Other times it's a choice between different options, such as headpieces, toughness, or critical rate. You're making a choice between offense and defense. So how do I tell you which one to take? Because then as soon as I make a statement, someone will say, but I could do this, I could do this. There's 50,000 what ifs. Let's take a real quick look of an example. For example, on an Aranor dagger, there is no or. You take one stat, you take at a high rate, you take another stat at a lower rate, and then you get a choice of basically, if you're melee, crit rate or attack speed. Really, there's no def pen here, there's no crit damage here. But what about on a hood, on a headpiece? You could load that with toughness gems, or you could load that with critical rate gems, or you could do a split. There's a lot of options there. When we get into Hiram weapons, this is where it gets even more player customizable. You could take crit rate and crit damage, or you could take def pen and crit damage, or you could take crit rate in def pen. So there is no right answer exactly of which way you want to do it. It really becomes a matter of what do you want to do with your character, with your gear, to impact your build in your class. And it's really, what do you want to do? Well, I know some people are like, I want to be the best. Give me the absolute best. Well, then go all out offense. Don't take any defensive stats. Take absolutely every offensive stat, and that's what you'll have. But then when everybody kills you, you'll understand why. Going to talk about notes on def pen real quick. Approximately 12,250 is the max for def pen that I can come up with. Now I do want to put the caveat. On that. That does not factor in shield def pen, which is a whole. I'm not even talking about that segment of the herd of cats over there, because you can get a lot higher than 12,250 if the person's wearing a shield and you stack up shield def pen as well. I'm not even going to try to do those calculations. I do want to say that def pen takes away from the top of the defense curve. And what I mean by that is if you get the person down to 0 defense, they'll have 0% mitigation left. If you take them down to 1,000 defense, if you can't get them all the way to 0, you leave them with 1,000, you're leaving them with 11.23% mitigation. If you get them down to 8,800, you're talking about def pen versus a 20,000 plate user, you're going to get them to 52.69. If you get them down to 9,000, it's 53.25. As you can see, it's weighted a little bit better at the bottom. It's weighted a little bit less at the top. So unless you're driving them all the way to 0, unless you go all in, you get them all the way to 0, you are going to leave them with a pretty substantial mitigation. I also want to talk about def pen only addresses one of the 3 major mitigation steps. Sure, you take out their base defense or their base magic defense, but they still have their toughness and the received damage mitigation. And if you make too big of a sacrifice in your crit damage, you're not going to have enough damage output to get through that toughness and that damage mitigation. So just a singular example. What I did is I did 3 builds in Hiram plate. Everything else stays the same. The only changes I made was I sacrificed a little bit for crit rate and crit damage for a little bit of def pen. And then I went all out for def pen. And when I say all out, I didn't go to the 12,250. I still made, in my opinion, the character playable with defensive stats. Now, I could go build 4 and go absolutely nuclear weapon glass cannon, but I don't want to go that route because I don't want to show something that puts up big numbers and then advise people to go down a bad path, or at least what I consider a bad path. You can definitely do that yourself in Archeage Gear Calculator. On the defensive side, what I have is I have Jay's stats for the Cloth Healer, and then I have Mystic Angel's stats for the Plate Healer, because they're 2 very conceivable builds that you'll run into. So here we go. Build 1, max crit rate and damage. You get that 94.5% crit rate. Now, the caveat is I didn't factor in resilience. Again, that's another side of the herd. Starts to get ridiculous. And I know some people are going to say, well, it's not a fair comparison. You're right. It absolutely isn't, because I didn't factor in resilience. But factoring in resilience becomes yet another thing that is going to sway our numbers. So you hit somebody for and this is all based out, assuming a crit on the precision strike. See, I said assume a crit. I'm just going to let them have the crit. Versus a cloth healer, you would do 7,337 damage. Versus a plate healer, you would do 4,900 damage. Assuming a crit and a puncture, you see that a crit and a puncture does 9,000 damage versus a cloth healer. And that's pretty good. That's a pretty good sizable chunk of Jay's hit points. I have about 28,000, so that's a pretty big hit. Now, again, that would get reduced by my resilience, but it's a pretty solid hit. When you go into build 2, you'll notice that you have 3,710 def pen, but that's come at the price of a lot of your crit damage. Now, I know, again, some people are going to say, well, your crit damage would be reduced anyway. And that's true, but this column would be reduced as well. So you're talking almost no damage again versus the plate healer. The crit has become so much smaller. You're doing 4,300 on a puncture, it'd be less than 5,000. Versus J, you see it does less damage. You didn't do enough. You didn't go deep enough into the def pen to make up for the crit damage that you lost. And your total attack pays the price for that. And the last one, we went even more def pen. We're at 6,800 def pen, almost 6,900 def pen, but your crit rate is now negligible. And again, I've said it twice, I'll say it one more time. That crit damage is probably going to be reduced down to only 50% with resilience. And you'll see that your numbers alone, before those even get reduced by resilience, those numbers are minuscule compared to what they were with the big crit damage. So what our findings are is you have to have an enormous amount of def pen. An enormous amount. Even versus a cloth healer like Jay, you'd need 8,800 def pen. You have to get to 8,800 def pen to take me to 0 mitigation. To achieve this level, you will have sacrificed almost all of your critical damage. And we run into this problem, and now on the finding sheet, lower crit rate for def pen, resilience will matter more. You won't crit as often. If you lower crit damage for def pen, your resilience matters more. You won't crit for as much. You need to have realistically, you need to have over 200% crit damage. You'll never go below the floor of 50%, but just naturally assume somebody's going to reduce 140% of your crit damage. That's based on 10,000 resilience. Not everybody is going to be running around with 10,000 resilience, but if you assume that, you can assume for the top end of the scale. Now, for example, Jay's build does not have 10,000 resilience in it. I don't run Hiram Gear, so I would not reduce your crit by that much. Again, it's rock, paper, scissors with a dice throw, and I think at this point, it's a dice throw. Do they use cloth? Do they use leather? Do they use plate? But then it's also a second dice throw of how are they built? So what are my conclusions? What do you want? If you go all-out offense, crit rate, crit damage, def pen, you will have to sacrifice defensive capability. For example, you could put 6 crit rate gems in your headpiece. Then that's going to give you 12.6% crit rate. Then you could put def pen versus crit rate on your Hiram weapons. But now you have an expense to survivability of 1,800 toughness. That's 18% damage mitigation if that's your only toughness, which I don't assume it would be. But 18% at base 0. It's an extra 8% damage mitigation when you add 1,800 onto 5,000. So you do run into the whole, I took out all my toughness gems in my headpiece for more crit rate, but what did it do for me? It let me switch up and get more def pen. Did it give you enough def pen to make up for the loss of survivability? That's subjective, and that's up to you. Recommendations, critical damage is still the way to go. This may change based on upcoming changes, but want to remind people when Ancestral level 55 comes out, people will be gaining 21 levels. So they're going to gain 2.1% received damage reduction. They're going to gain 210 toughness, 420 resilience. So keep all that in mind. Also, T4 Hiram Gear will add even more physical and magic defense. But there's no way that I know of to get more def pen. So even if you went max def pen right now, your curve is going to get lowered when the new gear comes out. You're going to get more flat damage reduction on the gear. It's not a lot, but it's a little bit. You're going to get more resilience on the gear. It's not a lot. It's a little bit. Most people will pick up one extra toughness gem when they can take their Hiram Gear to Mythic. They'll pick up a slot. Their chest piece, they'll pick up a resilience gem, or they'll pick up a damage specific gem. Some people will pick up one toughness gem in a Mythic headpiece. So you're looking at seeing a lot more toughness, and you don't have a way to mitigate against toughness. Def Pen isn't going to help you mitigate against toughness. So sure, you go all Def Pen, you're positive that you can get them to 0 even with the new T4 Hiram boost. Well, you still you don't have a way to address their toughness. Of course, like we said, Korea, XL, Archeage, they are making some changes in time to kill and survivability. They have acknowledged that it's probably not the way they want it to be. So I'm going to recommend that you go crit damage, get up to as close to 100% crit rate as you can, get up to as close to 300% crit damage as you can. Use Def Pen as a little bit of additional damage as you reduce one of the 3 curves. Now, of course, guys, you might feel differently, and this is the perfect type of video. Leave your comments below. If you got some comments, make sure you bring some builds from Archeage Gear Calculator. Show me some stuff. That way I can loop back around and I can really dig into your research. But I am going to say that I am done with this question now. This question has taken up way too much of my time, and I got to get on to bigger things. Speaking of bigger things, I got Archeage 101 to do. I got to do those class videos. I wanted to get more of those out last week, but I really didn't feel like I could do it without the focus concept video, which is up there in the upper corner. If you guys want to talk more, join my Discord. My Discord gets more robust every day. Join me when I stream Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And then big thank you to all my sponsors. Without my sponsors, I couldn't give away like gift cards and stuff. Gift card giveaway is down below. And that one's going to close up at the end of this month. And then I don't know how I'm going to do that now because YouTube changed their rules. So I can't do the giveaways the way I had been doing them. All right, guys, that's it. I'm going to get this in a post because I want to get thinking about how I'm going to do the remaining 5 class videos. You guys take care. Hey, where are you going? You're not done yet. See these videos? This video's up here to watch. You got to go over here. Hit the chibi. Subscribe to the channel. Check out the webpage. And I'll see you guys on Twitch.